Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it a couple of minutes while everybody joins and then we'll get started. Hey, I think we'll get going. So hi everyone and welcome to the webinar. Thank you so much for joining this evening. My name's Jem and my role at the BDD Foundation is the People and Projects Manager, which involves managing the Overcoming BDD programme. So I'm joined today by Rufus, Martin, Patience and Emma, who will introduce themselves in a moment. But before we start, I thought it would just be helpful for those who are just learning about the programme to share a little bit more about what the Overcoming BDD programme is and what it offers. So the Overcoming BDD programme is a 20-week self-help programme which was initially created to bridge the gaps in BDD treatment. And it was established and developed by leading experts, Professor David Veal and Dr. Rob Wilson. And the programme combines evidence-based CBT techniques alongside peer facilitation, offering what we have found to be a really unique and one-of-a-kind approach to overcoming BDD. And the programme is delivered online, so it's delivered to small groups of roughly 15 to 20 people and is available to those aged 18 plus. The groups are facilitated by lead facilitators with lived experience. So we have Rufus here with us today, who we'll meet in a moment. So lead facilitators alongside an incredible team of volunteer co-facilitators who are all using their lived experience of BDD to give back to the BDD community. And this approach that we follow offers a really supportive, really empathetic and safe environment where participants can not only form connections with the other group members, but also take guidance from the facilitators who really understand the condition because of their own lived experience, and essentially all kind of support one another through that journey of recovery. And throughout each phase, participants are guided through practical CBT strategies and then provided with homework activities to keep working on the things that they've covered in the group sessions to help kind of contribute towards bringing the BDD symptoms down, increasing their self-compassion and building sustainable recovery practices, which people can keep using, kind of keep using and keep building on even after the program has finished. That's kind of the goal. So for today's webinar, as I said, I'm joined by one of our lead facilitators, Rufus, who'll be hosting alongside me, and 3 former participants of the program who have very courageously come to share more about their own experience of completing the program, their reflections and learnings, and their longer term recovery prospects. I just also want to mention that all of us on the session today have BDD at varying points in our recovery. And as I'm sure you will understand, speaking about, these personal experiences on camera in front of an audience can feel quite nerve-wracking and exposing. So please do just bear with us, if we have any hiccups or if we just need a moment to kind of pause at any point. So we'll start with some introductions. Rufus, would you like to start us off and say hello?
Yes, thanks, Jem. So yeah, as Jem mentioned, I was one of the facilitators on the Overcoming BDD program. I have lived experience with BDD. I've had it since I can remember, really. Probably first time was, feeling self-conscious at the age of 6. And just over the years, I've gone on a big journey with things, and I came across the foundation initially for treatment about 5 years ago. Um, I'm in a different place now with my recovery, and a year ago, I started volunteering with the foundation, just facilitating group peer-led support. Um, and then when this program came up, when Jem mentioned it, I just jumped to the opportunity to get involved, because it's such a rare and unique thing in this space. It's so tailor-made, and it was just an honor being a facilitator on it. I feel like I got as much out of it as the participants. So that's a bit about me. I will pass on to Martin so we can briefly introduce ourselves.
Thanks, Rufus. Yes, I'm Martin. I attended the 20-week Overcoming BDD program, cycle 7. I myself have lived in experience with BDD as well. I've had it for about 30 years now, and I've struggled quite a lot over the years. And I came across the BDD program, and essentially I was at my wit's end at this point last year. I just really wanted to help myself. I know that peer support does work, having experience with peer support in my own workplace. So I was excited to get involved with this program, and I'm still on my journey now. I've not come through the other end, but I'm moving forward, and thanks to the program itself, I believe that I've made large progress and large leaps. So that's a little bit about me. Thank you.
I'm Emma. I also completed cycle 7 of the program. I feel very lucky to have come across the BDD Foundation and the program in general. I only recently came to understand what BDD was. I knew that I'd been experiencing body dysmorphia for a very long time, that was sometimes debilitating, and came to the point where I realized I needed help and I needed support. And yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Hi everyone, I'm Patience, and I was also on the most recent cycle 7, I think, with Martin. I've had BDD for what feels like forever, and really, really struggled with my thoughts, feelings about my body image in all various manners for probably well over 20 years now. So yeah, that's what brought me to the cycle, and I'm really happy to be here and to support the BDD Foundation, because the course, the program, the workshop is amazing. Yeah, so thanks for having me.
Oh, thank you all so much for those introductions. So firstly, we'd really like to know what motivated you to join the programme? Was there anything in particular that you feel stood out to you about it? And what were your initial expectations before you joined?
I'll go. I hope you don't mind. Like I said in my introduction, I joined the programme literally because I was at my wit's end, having lived through and continue to live through my experience with BDD. But saying that, when I went to the doctor, when I was a lot younger, there was not a lot of information out there, and I don't think my GP knew exactly what to do for me, and put me on course of antidepressants, medication, stuff like that. But over the years, I've empowered myself to be able to talk more openly and freely about mental health issues in general. But I knew this, what I live with, was something that I'd never talked about to others, or a large audience, or even an audience such as yourselves, for a long time. From my experience with peer support, I know that it is important. So I thought, when this program was offered to me, I knew that it was something that I really wanted to get involved with. I wanted to go through that 20 weeks of getting into a recovery stage, which I'm not there yet, but I am getting there. I had high expectations of the program, and if I have to be honest, the program exceeded my expectations, and I'm really so happy to be here today to be able to talk about it to you. What stood out about the program itself was I was enabled to myself to explore where, when the BDD started, and this really, really helped me. So yeah, thank you.
I think very similarly, I went to my GP. That's where I first went when I was reaching out for help, and it was a very disappointing experience for me, and I felt very, very dismissed. I didn't really, like I said before, understand what BDD was, but I just knew I had all these symptoms and that it wasn't normal and I couldn't go on like that. And what I was basically told is that the NHS is just so inundated with referrals to mental health services and specialised therapies. And I work within the field of mental health, so I do have an understanding of how long these waiting lists can be. But I was told that they couldn't even put me on a waiting list just because there was such a sheer backlog of referrals. So I came away feeling quite like deflated, and I ended up doing my own research, and that's when I came across the BDD Foundation and the program. And to be honest, I didn't have many expectations really because of how sort of disappointing my whole experience had been so far. So I put feelers out about the program, and I just remember feeling so like relieved when Jem, you first sent me like an email like responding to to saying that you were starting the program back up again, and I just felt like relief and just a glimmer of hope that there was help out there, and I just felt really excited about what that might look like.
I just want to echo what Emma said about that glimmer of hope when Jem sent me an email. So I came across the BDD Foundation through, I suppose, again, very similar to Emma, that kind of dismissed kind of feeling from the NHS. I did manage to get some therapy on the NHS to then be discharged and being told your BDD is something we can't help with. So bye-bye. And that's where the BDD Foundation really showed how amazing they were. Reached out to them several times just for support, and times that I was really low, like tears streaming down my face, just typing on the computer. Just it felt like there was somebody the other end. I'd get an email, next day or something they really understood that. So when Jem come back and said we're starting, I was just so excited. Yeah. And also the fact that the approach seemed to be quite unique. I think that's another thing as well. Like it didn't seem to be, I like the fact that they make you do things. You don't just sit back and do nothing. And, you do get to go away with actions you can try and implement. And that was really appealing as well, because I hadn't experienced that in any other place I seeked help.
Yeah, thank you all. And thank you for sharing that as well, Patience. So you're absolutely right. It's very action-led. There's lots of activities and exercises that you can be kind of doing in the session, but then as well, as kind of working on in between. And just to kind of touch on what you shared, what you all shared about that experience of feeling kind of let down, dismissed, misunderstood under other services. Sadly, I think that is an experience that still so many people with BDD do experience. But what I am glad to hear is that you felt hope, that I think that's so important. And I think the groups really do offer that and that hope and connection. And hope is one of the foundation's values as well. So that's really important to us that you feel that in, you know, in that time of need. So yeah, thank you all for sharing. Over to you, Rufus.
Thanks. Yeah, I'll just add also that I think that what's really amazing and unique about the program is that it's 20 weeks, which, so we started in one season and then finished in another, I mean, the 20 weeks shot by, but just I feel like having a sustained period of time like that dedicated to BDD is really amazing. It's really important, really wonderful, because often on the NHS you're limited to 8 sessions or whatever it might be. But so obviously a big factor of the program is the fact that it's peer-led and it's a group, which I know can be, I know when I first did therapy, the idea of a group was really intimidating, but actually there's so many benefits to it once you actually sort of try it out. So I just want to know how did you guys find the group, how did you find the support in the group during the journey? And if you have any specific moments that stood out or any reflections on the peer support approach that you'd like to share.
I'll hop in if that's okay, because I remember when it was a peer support group, I thought, oh no, like that's genuinely how I felt. Like, oh, I don't sort of want to be, you know, just moaning and stuff like that. There's going to be a group of people, and I felt really uncomfortable. And then I remember signing on for the first time to the first session, and I think you could feel everybody else was feeling exactly like how I was. But what made you relax was how the facilitators were, and then we sort of set a group of ground rules as well. That was one of our first things we did, where we our group. So I don't know if so Emma wasn't on the same group or psyche or group as me, but our group, we discussed a set of ground rules so that everyone felt comfortable. And that was really cool because we could say, actually, let's not comment on how anybody looks any aspect of the time. It's just we don't acknowledge that, you know, that those kind of things made you feel really safe, I suppose, and made you feel more comfortable. Yeah, that's definitely something that stood out to me about the peer support, that, you know, we could all agree on a set of boundaries first, and then if somebody did get perhaps a little bit emotional or upset or teary or needed to drop out because I was really struggling that time, or turn up and not say anything, we were all there for each other and there was no judgment with that. So actually my preconceptions of a peer support group was so wrong, and to the point where I'd shout about it now, definitely.
Yeah, just to echo what Patience said there. I mean, peer support is so important, and the fact that the facilitators created that confidential, safe space for us was really good. And the fact that during the first couple of sessions there was no expectation for people to put cameras on, so it wasn't like a business meeting where, you know, your peers expect you to put your camera on. And I'm not sure whether I had my camera on straight away or something like that, but it's because the group was, I wouldn't say it was a tiny group, but due to the size of the numbers within that group, it gave me the confidence to be able to keep my camera on for the majority of the time. And I've kind of used this as recovery for me, because it's important that I'm in a comfortable space to be able to look back at my reflection and, you know, for want of a better word, not feel disgusted in looking back at myself. And I really feel that the guys, the facilitators, and the people on the program itself, we all came together as a community, and we were all there for each other. Like Patience said, if one of us wasn't feeling particularly great, we were all there to support each other and get each other through that. So yeah, just on the back of what Patience has said, I thoroughly agree with what has been said. And yeah, thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. As Patience and Martin have both said, like, I think what was really lovely is that at the start, majority of us were quite, timid and quiet and nervous about what was going to happen, and we were mainly sort of communicating with facilitators. But as we got more comfortable and we got to know each other, we just began really offering support and encouragement to each other and just validating each other's experiences. And once we realized that we could all, relate to each other and we were in a safe space, and we weren't going to be judged, we were often able to sort of laugh and find humor in our experiences, which is so important. And or offer encouragement and insight when someone was having a particularly bad week. So yeah, that's what made it really special. And obviously the fact that the program is peer led and that Rufus and Jem and the other facilitators can really relate to our experience as well and share their own, really just added to that feeling of safety, really.
So much. Thanks, guys. Yeah, I totally agree. Like, the atmosphere just felt so safe. It felt like a cocoon of understanding. Because when are you really in a space where everyone is able to understand this thing that you're going through? So that's a really unique space. And it was, yeah, it's just a wonderful environment, and it's a wonderful way to kind of encourage yourself and each other to go on the right journey and continue that journey. All right, over to you, Jem.
Thank you. And that's so lovely to hear from you as well. And I really connect as well with that, like, relief when people just get it. Because I felt that when I first, my first involvement with the charity was to join on the regular support groups as a service user. And yeah, just that moment of like, comfort and relief that you don't have to like really fully explain what BDD is and all of that kind of thing. So yeah, to feel that from the facilitators and others is yeah, like I said, just a big relief, and I'm glad that you guys felt that too. So the next question from us is, can you share a moment during the programme that you feel represents a turning point or significant growth for you?
Do you mind if I start with that one? I think a turning point for me was almost within the first couple of sessions. Is the fact that I recognised that BDD is a mental health condition, and it's not something that was in my head. And I knew there were resources out there, such as the program, to get me through this. And I don't want to scare anybody, but yeah, as Patience and a couple of others have mentioned, with the program, there was homework. And one of the things during one of the weeks, I can't remember which week it was to conduct what they call behavioral experiments. And we could pick anything that we wanted to experiment with during that week, and then we would pick a following week. One of the things for me is I cover up a lot. I haven't always done that, but I seem to cover up a lot. And the experiment for me was to be in a relaxed way to remove the cover or remove this gilet, for instance. I'm wearing it because it's cold, by the way, today. But to remove it, to be free to move about in just the t-shirt. I think it was the summer months at that particular point. To sit in the garden and just, in my mind, see how long I could be in that relaxed space without the cover, before I would cover up again. And I did. Yeah, I won't lie to you. I did. And I still do to a degree, but less and less. Exposing myself to this was really important for me, and I think it's enabled me to grow as a person. It enabled me to be more transparent within my workplace, because BDD is still misunderstood. I've had people ask me in my workplace, the main thing is, but you look great, or something like that. I don't understand it. So it enabled me to start not only continuing to educate myself, but to educate people within my workplace as well. And on the back of that, it empowered me, gave me the courage to even set up a session to talk about BDD within the workplace as well. And quite a few people joined that session. I was grateful and gracious to have a couple of the members from the foundation, a couple of the facilitators to be in on that discussion as well, which was really a really groundbreaking moment, I feel. So through the help of this program and those areas, it's really helped me to have more confidence to talk openly and freely and recognize the BDD doesn't define me as a person. It's not all that I am. But yeah, I just thought I'd mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And I think testament to your hard work as well, that you were able to start speaking about it more openly and publicly. I know obviously you've said the program helped, but it's also what you were saying around like that, it's the application of it and applying yourself to those behavioral experiments and gradually working your way up to feel more comfortable in those situations that previously, and I'm sure still do at times, feel very scary. So yeah, it's absolutely credit to you and your hard work as well.
Yeah, and as you were saying, Martin, the exposure therapies are such an integral part of the program, which I very much am taking on and continuing to do in my daily life, including this webinar. And the fact we're all here with our cameras on, public speaking, I think for people who have BDD, that is a massive exposure therapy. So, I witnessed that from the beginning of the program to the end of the program. The beginning, I think all cameras were off, and after 20 weeks, without prompting, everyone had their camera on. And it was just a shocking moment for me as facilitator, but such an empowering, wonderful thing to see. So just thought I'd add that. So my next question was, were there any specific skills that you gained during or honed during the program that you use regularly now?
Emma, are you going?
There you go, you go.
The one of the things that really stood out to me is a way of, so if you're having a really challenging day or really horrible thoughts, was a coping strategy, I suppose it's called taking your thoughts to court. And I thought that was really helpful, to the point that I haven't told anybody else other than my husband about my BDD, and I spoke to him about this coping strategy, and the idea is that, well, basically you take your thoughts to court. So if I start saying, I felt like everyone was looking at blah 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 tonight, then my husband will go, you felt like that, but where was the evidence? Where was the evidence that this happened? And it's just really helpful having somebody on your side, and then they can, if they can see that you're sort of spiraling, they can use this kind of coping strategy, and sometimes you manage to claw yourself out of that despair pit and you think, actually, yeah, I really was, making it out to be a bigger deal than what I needed to be in that moment. Or even if you still feel like it, your brain knows, actually, yes, logically, I had no evidence for those feelings. And I found that, for me, was one of the best strategies I learned.
Yeah, I think for me, like in general, just the theory side of the program was just super helpful in understanding my thought processes and the safety behaviors, and just noticing when I'm engaging in them. And then the way that the program progresses and you move on to the CBT element, like the taking your thoughts to court element, where you're just learning how to challenge those thoughts, and then the exposure work where you're putting it into practice and putting yourself in situations that you would normally avoid with your BDD. It's just such a helpful progression. And then these are all things that, you know, we continue when it comes to the end of the program, and you've got all these tools then to keep moving forward with, and exposure work that you'll continue day to day.
I think you'll also notice as well, I don't know if that happened in your group, Emma, but as the weeks went on, we all learned different strategies, or some things really resonated with us, and another week maybe that strategy didn't quite resonate with us. But if one of the members turned up and they were having a particularly hard day, and you'd all of a sudden have like 3 or 4 people go, well, have, you know, remember to try and do this, or, you know, all of a sudden you had people reminding you of those coping strategies, because sometimes when it's so hard, like when you're feeling so low, you don't really think of them. You don't, it's not always on the forefront of your mind to go, okay, well, I'm feeling really about myself. What do I need to do? You don't really think like that. So having that group of people that can go, hey, have you tried that? Or test this out, you know, that was really useful.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
you're doing it all manually at the start, aren't you? Until you get to the point where you're starting to do it a bit more automatically. It
Yeah.
does help to have people really just sort of remind you.
Yeah, like a prompt. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things that I noticed as well, I wouldn't say skill per se, but to recognize that recovery is possible, very, very possible, but recovery is a process, and you know, everybody will recover at different rates. And I'm by no means recovered, but I'm definitely getting towards that recovery, and that's really exciting for me. And to be able to pass on skills to others as well, be able to talk about my experiences without that fear of judgment is testament to the program. It really is, and the community that not only the facilitators but us as a group, that community spirit that we created, it was really, really important and helpful in my recovery.
Totally. Thanks so much, guys. I mean, yeah, it's exactly what I observed, which is that it's that sort of, it's so full, the program, so full of different experts' approaches to the, I guess, the same problem, coming at it from different angles, that it's like there's sort of something for everyone. Even if one person doesn't quite vibe with one week, suddenly the next week it's like, oh, that really clicks with me. And it's really interesting because you can't really predict what sort of is the right one for you. But I think, like, you know, it's these neural pathways that get a bit stuck, and that they need sort of shifting. And so you have to kind of practice the things, the new tools over and over and over again, until they finally start to shift. And before you know it, you're actually applying them, you know, out of the group. And again, that's the benefit of the 20 weeks, because you have a nice long period to kind of keep practicing it, keep practicing it, keep practicing it.
I agree. I certainly think it helps with, like, I guess, general accountability. I guess the word accountability sounds quite strong, but like, I love seeing that play out in the group when someone has like really struggled with the homework, and then someone else shares how they went about it, and then they're willing to kind of give it another go, or they're like, oh, I hadn't thought about it like that, or it just kind of opens up this new perspective maybe that encourages them to try it again. So that definitely happens in the group. And I think what comes with that as well, I've definitely noticed in the groups, is like, what, just tapping into what you were saying, Martin, of that group connection and that community, you start to feel really deeply for other people's recovery journeys, and you really root for them. Like, you really want, you know, you've kind of gone through this really unique journey together, and you really want them to get better. But what I think so beautiful about that is that when you are able to have that compassion for the rest of the group and for other people, you realize that you have that in you as well, you know, like the compassion exercises that you do around like, can you develop it for someone else? If yes, then we can also give that to ourselves. So I think just by being in a group, you kind of you realize you've got this encouragement and compassion and support for others that you can then also, you know, turn on yourself as well. And I think, yeah, the fact that you've kind of felt that real connection and that real like, yeah, just sense of kind of all being in it together is such a huge part of what the groups are about. So yeah, so I'm rambling now. So I'll move on to the next question. Did anything about the program or your experience surprise you?
Yes. The thing about the program, I think for me, I can't speak for anybody else that was on the program, but for me, it's the fact that as the program was nearing its end, we created such a great community and we were really caring for each other. We didn't want it to end, and I didn't want it to end, and I felt kind of sad that it was reaching that 20-week end point. But that's not to say that I couldn't continue that support for a few of the attendees going forward after that. So that really surprised me that we all persevered through 20 weeks. I mean, one of the most difficult things I feel from my experience is getting through that virtual door in the first place. And the fact that myself and the others continue to attend week after week was testament to how the program was working as a collective. So I just thought I'd mention that.
Thank you, Martin. So I was just pausing. I wasn't sure if anyone else wanted to jump in on that one. That's totally fine. If not, and yeah, I guess it kind of ties into what Patience was saying earlier about just that the surprises around peer support feel endless, I guess. And that, yeah, that I think a lot of people do go into the sessions thinking, oh my goodness, 20 weeks. How am I going to get through 20 weeks? This feels forever. Especially in those early sessions, if you do find it hard, some of those earlier sessions can be challenging and confronting. But I think you're not alone in that feeling, Martin, of being like, oh no, like coming towards the end, actually being quite surprised at how much you've taken from it and just, yeah, that you don't want it to end.
I still miss it. I still miss it now. And I think, when did it finish, Martin? I can't remember. A couple of months. Yeah. Oh, I still miss it. It just really felt like meeting up near the end, just like with friends. You know, it really did.
Yeah,
It could go on forever.
yeah, it definitely shot by. I mean, I was convinced we were on like week 11 when it was like week 19, and I just had to keep checking and being like, it can't have been 20 weeks. That's half a year. Which, you know, that shows that we were all kind of loving that space and turning up. And again, it's just to throw in that for me, the big surprise was on the last session, everyone's camera being on without me encouraging or asking or even mentioning it. That was pretty huge. So what was the most challenging aspect of the program for you guys, and how did you overcome it?
I think for me, I seem to be going put myself first all the time. I'm sorry about that. But I just wanted to go back to the exposure therapy. I think when we were going through that particular week, I can't remember what week it was. I knew it was coming. I knew I wouldn't say I had to do it. I knew I wanted to do it. It was important to my recovery, and it was really, really daunting. And I think a few of us were talking on that particular session of how we felt quite scared of doing that. But what I would say to anybody who wants to be part of that program going forward, is to persevere with that, and that's exactly what I did. I persevered, conducting those exposure therapies, not just for that specific week or till the program ended, but continuing onward is really, really important for me to continue to do that. And I have been. It's been small steps, but I've learned not to expect too much from myself. I don't like using the term baby steps, so I'll use small steps. Small steps are as important as any large step. If I've managed to not cover up for 5 minutes in a day, that's progress for me. That's progress. So just thought I'd add that in. Thanks.
I feel like the most challenging aspect for me was probably just being brave enough to open up to this new group of people about my experience with BDD, and just overcoming that voice in my head that firstly told me that, you know, what I had to say wasn't important or didn't matter, but also told me that if I was honest about the extent of my BDD, that people would, you know, think I was really vain or just, you know, crazy. But of course that just wasn't the case. And I knew that, as you know, with any therapy, you get out what you put in, and so I really tried to share a little something most weeks. And at first, you know, my voice would really shake, and I'd feel so close to crying some weeks because I'd never spoken this openly before, and it's such a vulnerable space to be in. But it does get easier as time goes on, and you've got the support of everyone else, and everyone else is being brave enough to open up about their experiences. And I think you just really felt like we were all going through it together. It wasn't just you on your own.
Yeah, I remember about the exposure therapy, and sort of going back to what Martin was saying, that was so challenging and awful right at the beginning, and you knew it was, like Martin said, you blooming knew it was coming, and then all of a sudden you saw this sort of sheet, but then you talked it through, so it's like you build it up in your head, and then I think it was one of my first one or two exposure therapies, and I'll tell you what it was because I don't mind sharing. So I don't like wearing anything tight on my body, or showing anything. So I just went on a dog walk, before the meeting, and I thought, oh my God, I'm just gonna wear this t-shirt that, you know, that would make me feel really uncomfortable. And that was the most scariest thing, but I was so giddy about telling the group when I got back. It was just like, guys, oh my God, I've just done it. So like it felt horrible, but then you felt like you had people, almost felt like you had a party when you got back, like you actually got through it. So it was like a really challenging but really great side of it as well. You felt like you had like your cheerleaders there.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I so relate. I had the same thing myself. Like if I, you know, was having a kind of moment, and then I thought the group just filled my mind. And it was just like they're there.
They're gonna be so proud.
You're gonna be proud, or oh no, I'm gonna have to have to tell them. But yeah, I think like yeah, the crux, like we were saying before, the crux of the program is the really, really hard bit is the exposure bit, which is very much like built up to gradually. And the exposure stuff is very personalized. It's, you know, something that's huge to you might not be huge to someone else, and vice versa. But it's life changing. It really is life changing. And it's, like you said, small steps. You know, we're not jumping huge steps here. But what is amazing is people were kind of talking about doing something that was huge to them, and they were starting to make progress faster than they even were aware of it, if you see what I mean. Sometimes, um, you know, it was like from someone removed. I was just looking at their progress, and they were going just so in the right direction. Yet when you're in it, it's hard to see the progress you're making. When the steps are small, you don't quite know how significant they are. And that's, again, the benefit of having other people around you to be the cheerleaders and to be like, no, this is amazing. You know. And then just finally, Emma, like, I totally agree. When I first did a like peer-led support group, for me, just attending in a group setting and speaking in a group setting was something I found really difficult and I felt really uncomfortable with. So that was a form of exposure therapy for me anyway. And I think that's quite common for people. So again, another benefit of sort of forcing yourself into a group setting to kick the whole process off with that exposure.
Yeah, they really do feel like the smallest wins were like celebrated. Like you said, even if they were like, you know, that they were actually massive. And if I think to anyone else, like if I said to anyone else, oh, like I didn't look at my mirror for a whole hour today, and then else would be like, well, so what? But obviously in the group, they're like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. Like, was I knew? Like
Yeah, it's like, whoa. Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice. You really do adopt like a whole, I love that visual of like a team of cheerleaders cheering you on from the sides. But you're also right, like those, and I still tell myself that now often, like it is the small and consistent steps, just kind of keeping on that add up to those bigger changes. And you can't, I guess you can't always see them happening straight away, which can feel like frustrating and demoralizing. Like, am I making progress? But to have those people around you kind of highlighting it to you, and also to kind of, I guess, like towards the end of the program as well, as you'll know, we reflect back and start to think about longer term, like recovery maintenance and relapse prevention, but also looking back at, you know, the goals that you set at the start. So I think that's another reason why I guess the length of it is nice, because of course it at times it feels like you're really kind of plodding on, you know, there's work to be done and I don't know if I'm seeing any change. But then actually when you look back, like Rufus said, a season ago, a half a year ago, you realize stuff has changed and you have started to make, you know, those steps in the right direction. And just, I guess, chip away at that journey of recovery and continue it yourself as well. Yeah, thank you all. So the next question then is, what advice would you give to someone who's just starting out in the program or currently on the program? That there is a program running at the moment. They're actually on week 10, so they're halfway through now. So anyone who's on the program currently, or anyone that is considering joining the program, what advice would you give to them?
I would say probably, I was going to say one word, but it's more than one word. Persevere. Have an open mind. Like we've said today in this webinar, it can be daunting, it can be frightening, but give it a go. Really do give it a go, because within your little your sessions, you are really in a really great, safe, and caring community. So I would really encourage anybody who's contemplating on joining, or those that are currently on a program, to persevere with it, because the rewards are insurmountable, really. And be prepared for some really big moments. And you might not feel that whilst you're going through it, but some of the exposures that happened when I was going through the program were huge. To be able to talk to an audience like yourselves today, looking at myself in the camera, I couldn't have done that last year. So yeah, have an open mind, persevere.
I just got to back up mine, because I can't think. I was sitting there going, what else? What's good advice? What is good advice? But I just think that is possibly the best advice, is to persevere, because there are going to be times where you might feel, oh, I don't want to go tonight, or I feel daft, or you know, I've had such a rubbish day, or just something, or you'll find an excuse just to. But actually, I think the best thing is to sort of push through that. And like I mentioned before, like when if you have had like a particularly rough day, you don't have to turn up and say anything. Like it's just showing up for yourself actually, and just being there, part of the group. Sometimes there'd be people in the chat, oh, I had a really bad day today, guys. Don't really want to talk, but I'm just here to listen. And you never, and you don't know what you're going to learn from that, even if you're not like actually actively partaking in the group, but you're just being there around people. And I think that's really important to like try and show up as much as you can. And I think there's one time I couldn't go and I felt so bad. I felt like awful. I was like, I feel, we don't get given these opportunities like ever, really. So it was really great to try and make the most of it, I think is what I'm trying to say, but really long-windedly.
Yeah, I think that's exactly the best phrase to use. It's just showing up for yourself. You might not have had the time to do the homework or to do, designated exposure work, but day to day life is one big exposure, and just showing up to the group. And like you said, you don't know what you're going to get out of it that evening. So I think that's just being super patient with yourself and the process.
All really powerful. Thank you. And I'm glad you said that, Emma, because I think it's life happens, doesn't it? Some weeks and you think, oh my goodness, how is it already Tuesday, or how is it already Thursday? I've not quite done as much as I wanted to, but we would always encourage exactly what you've said. Just turn up anyway. You might just hear one thing, or there might be a discussion that you get into that really speaks to you. And I think what is helpful about the way that it's delivered as well is that you have all the module content, so you can always go back to it. Never kind of feel that you're not going fast enough, or if you didn't have time for something, there's always an opportunity to kind of revisit something when you feel more ready, or at your own pace. So yeah, that's super important as well, I think, to remember, especially for anyone that's doing it currently, having those weeks where you think, oh, not sure. And just tap into what you said, Martin. Perseverance, absolutely. I mean, it's a long journey, isn't it? It's not a quick fix, sadly. But I think having come out, like it's great to hear your experience of persevering and coming out the other end of it, and kind of starting to see, I guess, the benefits of that. As I said before, also testament to your hard work. So I know it is incredibly hard work to kind of keep applying yourself, and persevering. I'll pass back to you, Rufus.
So do you have any longer term recovery goals for the future? And has the program shaped how you view the future?
So I have quite a few goals for 2025, BDD related. But for me, is to persevere with the program, continue the community and I did see some of the chat pop up actually, continue with the community that we've created outside of the program, and stay into contact with one another to support each other with that. But I really want to work with the foundation on creating a workplace toolkit. And I think this is really, really, really important. A toolkit as in how employees can talk to their line managers, and equip them with the tools to be able to start those really, really difficult conversations, because they are difficult. And it took me a really long time to be able to talk to my line manager about it and to educate them. But in the same way, equipping line managers and bosses and whatnot to be able to maybe start the conversations or continue the conversations with their own staff as well. And I think to produce something like this is really, really important. And I do hope to work with the foundation to produce this toolkit. So that's something that's really the program has really helped me to be able to recognize my issues and to be able to transfer the skills that I've acquired from the 20 weeks and to help other people as well. Because I think it's BDD for me it's still so misunderstood, and particularly in a workplace. I mean, like with me, I was living with BD before I actually started to be more transparent. For years, I've not talked about this, let alone my immediate family, my loved ones, and to be not able to talk about it and feel that shame, and feel with that have that fear of judgment that, oh, if I do talk about it, people will think I'm weird. But no, it's and it all comes back to perseverance. Really persevere with the program, because you will be given the skills to be able to continue transferring the information and what you've learned outside of those 20 weeks. So that's what I have in plan for 2025. Yeah. Thank you.
I think for me, coming into the program, my sort of few of my main goals were to just stop missing out on experiences and opportunities to make memories with the people around me, purely because I didn't think I looked good enough to live my own life. And just to take all that time and energy that I put into worrying about my appearance and that sort of looks-based thinking, and just put it into my hobbies and my work and my relationships, and to pour into all the other areas of my life. And all those goals still stand. Like that's what I'm going to be working towards long term. And even though I still feel like I'm in the thick of it sometimes with my BDD, I feel like the program has just given me, that hope and the tools to move forward. So I just want to keep showing up for myself, and, hopefully one day BDD won't even factor into the decisions that I make day to day anymore.
I think for me, one thing that's been in my mind is actually so every week we're given a printout, or we can use it on the computer, but of questions and things to think about and actions and all sorts of stuff. And for me, I'm still very much in a challenging place in my BDD, and I think one of the most useful things I've come away with is actually that each week's workbook that I can now, in my own time, I'm going to sit down and actually do it every week again. And I think that's really helpful for me, is to get the refresher there as well. So I think one of my sort of goals this year is just to go through the program again on my own accord. I think that's not like a huge goal, but it's something I think is really important for me. And I'm just grateful I've got that stuff that I saved every one, so I can go back through now.
Amazing. Thank you so much, guys. Yeah, they're all lovely to hear. Starting with Martin, I think like the power of actually being able to speak about it is, you can't underestimate, because especially if you feel like you've carried this thing like a shadow, but that's like a secret. I certainly wouldn't be here talking so openly about my mental health a few years ago, and I didn't stop to even question whether that was something I wanted to do now. It doesn't define me, and therefore there's no shame. But it's still part of my life experience. And I feel just the work I've done with the foundation has just solidified, like, kind of what you were saying, Patience, which is like reminding myself of the practice. And also what you were saying, Emma, which is sort of nurturing my garden of passion, and wanting to, do things that inspire me and make me feel good. And it's like all of them come together with this program. And I just think they're all, everything that you guys highlighted are all just so essential to moving forward. So loved all that.
Brilliant. Thank you, everyone. So we're moving on to our final question. So if you could summarize your journey on the program in one word or sentence, what would it be?
I would say, what a ride. It's been amazing. Yeah.
I feel like there's one word that has kind of come through tonight and that encompasses everything, and that's just hope. And that's what this program has given us, I think. Hope for healing.
I love that one. I think, yeah, I've been thinking about it for ages, and this is not going to be one word now, but I've tried so many different approaches to getting some kind of recovery. The word that keeps cropping up in my mind, even though I can sit here today and say I'm still, really struggling with it, the one word is revolutionary, because I have never, ever come across a program that has embodied like all of these different aspects all together. I've worked with coaches and then paid for therapy or got NHS therapy and all these different kind of things. And this seems to be so unique. That was not one word. Sorry. It's too
No, we said
it.
We said a word or a sentence, so you
That's a very
absolutely
long
fit the
sentence
brief.
as well.
No, but that's like just so incredibly touching, and what a lovely note to end on. All of your reflections then and throughout have been like really inspiring to me, and I'm sure to other people listening as well. And it's just been a real honor to kind of chat it through with you and just chat through your experience in a little bit more detail. I'm aware that we have finished earlier than we expected, which is better than running over, which is my usual fashion. So I'm thinking we could probably do 5-10 minutes Q&A if there are any questions, and then we'll just wrap up a little bit early if that works for everybody. I'm just going to move over to the Q&A if I can see a Q&A box. I'm not sure. Hang on a sec. I think they're maybe just being shared in the chat. Is that correct? Sorry, I'm just scrolling through because I think some of them have been replied to directly. So just give me a minute. If anyone has any questions, please feel free to unmute or to put them in the Q&A box if that's your preference. So I'll answer this one. I don't think this one's been answered. From Christine, who has given a lovely reflection. Thank you, and glad to hear that you're excited now hearing a little bit more about it and being on the waiting list. So in terms of the exposure, sorry, Christine's asked, how do the exposure exercises work? Do we select them ourselves or are they assigned to us? That part is the most intimidating part. And I think you're absolutely not alone in finding that intimidating. I think whether you're doing one-to-one therapy or something like this, a kind of group self-help program, it feels incredibly daunting to think about facing the things that BDD is so desperately telling you not to face. It feels so counterintuitive. So the way that they work on this program is that it's very kind of tailored by the individual. So everyone is given the same kind of exercises and modules, but I guess more specifically, something that we do when we first approach the exposure, the behavioral experiments, is something called a fear hierarchy. So you'll work together as a group and you'll do this in the session. You'll think about, I guess, what feels like the most manageable all the way up to the least manageable right now, and kind of work out what that looks like for you. As the panelists mentioned earlier, obviously that's going to look very different for everybody. What's at the bottom of somebody else's might be halfway up someone else's, and we encourage participants to really grade it. So if the bottom thing on your fear hierarchy still doesn't feel manageable at all, it probably needs breaking down a little bit more, and as a group you can troubleshoot that together. So you kind of set your own, because it's a group setting, you set your own fear hierarchy and then therefore set your own behavioural experiments. And at the start, I think the approach is to really encourage individuals to, I guess, just tackle one thing, one small thing. And that might be one thing that you're doing maybe just in the house, might not even involve, the full exposure that you're working up towards. It might be, stopping a safety behavior or reducing a safety behavior for a couple of hours in the house and then reintroducing it. It's going to look different for everybody. But then very, very slowly, we encourage individuals to kind of obviously work their way up the fear hierarchy, but also try and start making it like a part of your kind of day-to-day life. So trying to identify when there's situations where, oh, that could be a useful exposure situation. How could I maybe plan for that? Is there anyone that I can, help get to help support me in my life? And just, I guess make it like a day-to-day thing. So either bringing in new ones or repeating the same ones as well. So building up is really important, but also repetition and perseverance, as we've said so many times.
I also think it was sorry,
No, you go for it, please do.
Sorry, I was just saying, I think what was helpful for me was actually so with the exposure therapy, when there was something that I knew I was going to try. So if I was going out for the evening, wearing something particular, if I would quite often talk to the group about it before it happened. So we had our sessions on a Thursday. So, say I had a dinner to go out to on Friday, Saturday or something, I'd talk through all of my feelings and stuff that um before that event and before I did that exposure therapy. So that was really helpful as well. So you could sort of get other people's, well, they were cheerleading again, but you feel like you've got people supporting you. And then the next week, people are like, oh, Patience, how did you get on doing that? Tell me about that kind of thing. And it's really that was really helpful when it come to the exposure therapy. Because it's not exposure therapy. Is it what it's called?
Yeah, exposures, behavioural experiments, whatever you want to label them.
It was just really helpful to be able to talk to people about it, and you, like we've said, it's individual for each one. So what's really one person might think is really easy, it's really, really difficult for somebody else, and we talked through that with the group, and there wasn't any judgment ever with that. We treated everybody's sort of fears, with respect, and it wasn't like, oh, that's easy, that kind of thing. There was none of that. It was just so supportive.
Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes it was hard to know where to start with the experiments, but then some people would share their ideas, and then you think, oh, actually, yeah, I'm going to start there, or it would give you an idea for something else, and you could go away. So it was like everyone was able to sort of, I guess, confer and come up with ideas together. It wasn't just like you're on your own with your own list doing your own thing. So yeah, again, just a benefit of being in the group.
Yeah, definitely. I think that before, like you said, Patience and Emma, but also the after. So if things, obviously it's wonderful to celebrate each other and cheer each other on when you manage to face something, but also I think what's lovely about the groups is that when you didn't quite manage it, like there's that space as well. I think there's I don't facilitate on the groups anymore, but when I do, sometimes covering the facilitators, there's just so many like gear changes throughout the evening. Like sometimes it can be really tough, really kind of low and painful conversations, and sometimes these real kind of encouragement and cheering on. And there's space for both. I think when you come back after a week and you haven't quite managed what achieved what you hoped to, there's that support, isn't there? And that troubleshooting to be like, well, how might you approach it differently? It's not, all is not lost. It's not a failure. It's just maybe needing to kind of try and tweak it as well. So I think it's good that you have the space either side, I guess, of these behavioural experiments for sure.
Yeah, also one thing I did notice when we were in the group is that sometimes people would say, oh, I did it, but I felt terrible, so I failed. because I was feeling awful, and I was like, but you did it. And with every time you do it, like, things take practice. You can't expect to feel good the first time you do it, but the fact is you did it, and you pushed yourself that little bit out your comfort zone. So that was a bit of a pattern. I don't know if you remember that, Emma, but on our group, yeah, that happened quite a few times, and I thought that was quite interesting. I liked that. Um, Also, Eva wondered if the exposures are numbered 1 to 10, and that's sort of how we did it. But everyone had a different way of how they related to it. Some people found the numbering a bit intimidating, so color coded them green, orange, red in terms of like difficulty. But really, it's just, yeah, if numbering 1 to 10, 10 being the hardest, 1 being the easiest, is a good way for you, then that's sort of a good way of doing it.
And sometimes you don't know like really what order to until you've done it. And I'm like, oh, I thought I was going to be a 4, but it was actually a 9. So you do it, you just don't know.
Yeah, totally.
Definitely learning as you go often, aren't you?
Yeah.
I just wanted to share as well, in relation to the behavioral experiments or exposures. With the fear hierarchy, I think for anyone on the program or wanting to join the program, just to share as well that it's not an expectation that you make it to the top of your fear hierarchy by the end of the program. I think that's a worry for a lot of people. I've got 20 weeks to get to the end of this terrifying list of things to do. That's not the case at all. My weeks, months, years for a lot of people. I know I'm still working on, safety behaviours. This evening's been an exposure for all of us to speak on camera to an audience. So there's always more time. It's not that there's this cap at the end of the program and then that's it. You better be recovered. That's not our approach at all. So just in case that's a worry for anyone watching or listening as well, that it's an ongoing thing that you can kind of keep working towards with the tools that you've learned from the program, and hopefully with that kind of built confidence to be able to give them a go as well, hopefully.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Because also that list for me is ever evolving, and I kind of want that list to be ever evolving for the rest of my life. I sort of see that as where I think it's a brilliant approach for anyone in life, to make the most out of life and to constantly be sort of challenging yourself a little bit, BDD or not. So it's sort of a life's work in some ways, but not in an intimidating way, but in a kind of an empowering way, because it takes you to do things that you wouldn't think you could do, you know?
Yeah, I totally agree, Rufus, about that kind of ever evolving and kind of growing list and goals, I guess, to things we want to be able to do. We've got another question, which I'll answer. So Eva's asked, do you provide support for setbacks before the programme ends? The answer is yes. So the kind of final phase of the programme, I guess, is a real focus on recovery maintenance and relapse prevention, and I guess encouraging people to start thinking about what does that look like when the programme finishes. I know none of you wanted it to finish by the sounds of it, but what is the reality of that? And thinking about, firstly, as I said before, kind of how far have I come? What were my goals at the start? What are they now? How do I kind of want to shift those? But then also we go through like self-management plans, thinking about helping others to help you as well. And, what are some situations that might come up that are going to be particularly difficult? What are the tools that I've learned that I can then implement? And also what are the other kind of, I guess, like similar spaces and like services that either the BDD Foundation or other similar charities are offering that I could maybe tap into that kind of fulfill this this need I have as well for the peer support side of it. So we cover all of that at the end, and I hope that we do equip people to be able to kind of continue that journey and manage if there is a relapse, because I think what's very important in BDD is that the reality of lots of people do have those setbacks. It would be really unfair and unrealistic to set people up to think that they, are good to go now and everything's going to be hunky-dory, but instead actually being realistic about the fact that lapses or relapses do happen, and kind of normalizing that instead of feeling like a total failure and that you're never going to kind of get back to where you were. Actually kind of thinking about what does that look like if that does happen, and how might I move forward from that if and when it does come about. I hope that answers your question, and I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on that. Go ahead if you do.
I think it is important to have like a realistic view of the program. It's incredible, but I think 20 weeks isn't necessarily going to fix everything, but you come away with perhaps, even if it's just slight changes in your mindset, or like for me, I wouldn't necessarily say, I've improved a bit, but then now I can go, well, if I'm having a really hard time, I'll work through some of those workbooks again, so I think we kind of come up with a toolkit kind of idea of things to take away and how to deal with things. And yeah, I don't think you would expect to finish the 20-week program. We're like, yeah, well, fine, BDD, what? Like, that doesn't that doesn't happen, I don't think. But it doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It's For me, it's been the most helpful thing in regards to my BDD I've ever had.
Exactly. It's just the beginning at the end of the day, isn't it, of your recovery journey, but you are so much better equipped to deal with BDD and just to work alongside it as you're working through your recovery. That's the best thing.
Thank you. And that's so incredible to hear, patients, that you feel that way and that it's spent that much. Any further questions? I'm trying to look at the Q&A box and the chat just to make sure that we are covering it. So there's a question about whether we'll be sending the recording. It won't be sent out, but it will be available on YouTube within a couple of days. It will be on there. So if you want to watch anything back or share it with anybody, please do. So I think we'll finish there. Kitty's kindly put the link in the chat where you can read a little bit more about the program, and my email address is on there as well. So if anybody has any specific questions about the program or their individual circumstances in relation to whether the program might be suitable, or you'd like to join the waiting list, please do just pop me an email. But before we finish, I just want to say such a huge thank you to Martin, Patience, Emma, Rufus, who, you've just so bravely and so generously shared your experience with us. So I can't express how much it means. And it's just been a real honour to kind of hear your thoughts and hear your reflections about the programme. Thank you all so much. That's all from us.
Yeah, thank you.